We live in very interesting times, and one of the big things that's changed, certainly in the last 10, 20 years, is the amount of stuff that we get from China. Now, I remember the President of China said something along the lines, about 30 years ago, that China had a third of the world's population and they wanted to have a third of the world's economy, which is an interesting idea. You can't really argue against that. And they set out a plan and they've marched ahead. And one of the things they did was they opened up their country to commerce. There are a lot of joint venture companies where people from over here could sell into China, which is a massive market. Very attractive idea. But they had very high import tariffs, which meant it was very costly to sell things into China. But if you had a joint venture factory and you built your stuff in China, you had very low tariffs, and that was very attractive. What they did say is that these joint venture factories had to be 50% owned by a Chinese company, and that all the intellectual property, all the designs, all the concept had to be shared equally amongst both partners. Now that meant that they got up to speed with technology very, very quickly. And this was over 20 years ago. But at the same time, they were building technical universities and building research institutes and getting ahead of the game, really marching forward. And now what we're seeing is, particularly in the electric car industry, they are well ahead of the game. Their technology is better than anything over in Europe or America. They've also got huge manufacturing capability. And a lot of our manufacturing capability we've farmed out to China. So at the moment you might hear in the car industry of a global chip shortage. And there's various reasons for that. But as that supply ramps up, a lot of that supply comes from China, and they're going to supply their own car industry first. Now their car industry is massive. I mean, they've got 2 billion people in their domestic market. They've got some huge car companies that you've probably never even heard of. And they're looking over to world markets, and you can see why. Their production costs are a lot lower, their labour costs are lower, rates and all that sort of thing is lower. And so we're going to see some very cheap electric cars coming over from China very soon. And that is a massive threat to European and North American car industry, because we just have a more expensive cost base for making those vehicles. And what's happening is that there's this interesting tension building up, and obviously some Chinese car companies are buying European and North American car companies, and we've seen that with MG. MG is now owned by Geely. So basically it's a Chinese car company selling into the UK and into Europe through the MG brand. We're also seeing companies like Stellantis, and they've just bought a substantial share in a Chinese company. So it's going both ways. The upshot of this is over the next sort of 5-10 years we're going to see a massive reduction in the cost of electric vehicles. It's going to be a very, very sudden change, and it's going to just change the whole dynamics of the used car market. All of a sudden the old-fashioned fossil burning vehicles will just seem completely pointless. In 10 years' time, where will we be? And this is all before the theoretical ban on new combustion engines coming out. I think the whole market for combustion engine cars will die long before the law tells it to go away, just because of the sales of vehicles coming over from China that are just very competitive, excellent vehicles. We're seeing things like the Neo, and it's just going to change the game. So if you're working in the European or the North American car industry, brace yourself.